A dying boy gave a silent signal to a police dog, and what this dog did next shocked everyone. On a dark, freezing road, a young officer finds a boy clinging to life, unable to speak. But his trembling fingers tap a strange rhythm on the dog's paw. The dog reacts, like it understands something no human can. Within hours, files disappear, orders are silenced, and someone powerful wants that boy gone. The officer starts digging, but every clue leads closer to the people she thought she could trust. What was the boy trying to say? Why does the dog seem to know the truth before anyone else? And when loyalty becomes the only line between justice and corruption, who will make it out alive? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The pre-dawn darkness hung heavy over rural Route 23, broken only by the rhythmic flash of emergency lights that painted the cornfields in alternating red and blue. Officer Wren Calloway pulled her patrol car to a stop, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Her canine partner Rook sat alert in the back, his amber eyes fixed on the scene ahead. The wreckage told a violent story. A sedan lay crumpled against a telephone pole, its hood accordioned into twisted metal. Steam rose from the crushed engine block, mingling with the morning mist. The bitter scent of burnt rubber and antifreeze filled the air. "Stay," Wren commanded Rook as she stepped out into the chilly morning. Her boots crunched on broken glass while she approached the cluster of EMTs working frantically around the vehicle's passenger side. "What do we have?" she called out, pulling her jacket tighter against the autumn cold. "Single occupant, male, looks to be around 12 or 13. One of the medics responded without looking up. "Found him unconscious but breathing. No ID yet." Wren's trained eye took in the details. Single vehicle accident. No skid marks visible on the pavement. The impact point suggested the car had been traveling well above the speed limit when it left the road. The boy lay strapped to a backboard as the medical team worked. His face was pale beneath streaks of blood from a head wound, dark hair matted to his forehead. What struck Wren most was his stillness, not the stillness of unconsciousness, but a rigid, alert stillness. His eyes were open, darting between the faces above him. "Can you tell me your name?" one of the EMTs asked, shining a penlight into the boy's eyes. No response came. The boy's mouth worked silently, but no sound emerged. "Possible head trauma affecting speech," another medic noted. "BP's dropping. We need to move now." Something about the scene wasn't sitting right with Wren. Her instincts, honed by years of patrol work, were signaling that this was more than a simple crash. She moved closer, scanning the ground around the vehicle. "Hold on," she said. "Let me bring in my partner. He might be able to help." Wren returned to her cruiser and opened the back door. Rook emerged with fluid grace, his powerful shepherd's body coiled with purpose. She guided him toward the scene with a gentle hand signal. The boy's eyes locked onto the dog immediately. Something changed in his expression, a flash of recognition, perhaps hope. His hand twitched at his side. Rook approached carefully, his training evident in every measured step. As he drew near the backboard, the boy's hand moved with sudden purpose. His fingers found Rook's nearest paw, tapping against it in a distinct pattern. Wren watched in amazement as her partner's entire demeanor shifted. Rook's ears pricked forward, his posture becoming rigid with alert intensity. This wasn't his usual response to an injured civilian. This was his working posture, the stance he took when receiving tactical commands. "What is it, boy?" Wren murmured, dropping to one knee beside them. The boy's fingers continued their rhythmic tapping against Rook's paw. 3 quick taps, 3 slow, 3 quick again. A pattern. A code. "Ma'am," one of the EMTs interrupted. "We really need to transport now." Ren nodded, but quickly began searching the boy's clothing. In the pocket of his torn jeans, she found 2 items: a partially shredded plastic wristband with Valley Hope Rehabilitation Center still visible, and a small graphite key fob. The fob was expensive-looking, marked with an engraved hawk emblem. The EMTs were already lifting the backboard. The boy's hand fell away from Rook's paw, but his eyes remained locked on the dog until they loaded him into the ambulance. Rook watched the vehicle pull away, his body still taut with alertness. Ren stood in the settling dust, turning the key fob over in her hands. The hawk's eye seemed to stare back at her, challenging. In her 15 years of law enforcement, she'd learned to trust her instincts. Right now, every one of them was screaming that this was no ordinary accident. She looked down at Rook, who hadn't relaxed his vigilant posture. "You got something there, didn't you, boy? Something important." The German Shepherd's amber eyes met hers with an intelligence that still amazed her after their years together. Whatever message that boy had tapped out, Rook had understood it as a deliberate command. Dawn was breaking now, painting the crash scene in pale golden light. Ren photographed the skid marks, the impact point, and the vehicle's final position. She collected glass samples and noted the angle of the telephone pole impact. But her mind kept returning to that moment of connection between the injured boy and her canine partner. The rehabilitation center wristband suggested a troubled history. The expensive key fob hinted at connections to wealth. And that coded message, tapped out in what might have been the boy's last conscious moments, spoke of something far more sinister than a simple car accident. As she finished her preliminary investigation, Ren couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just witnessed the beginning of something much larger. The boy's silent signal to Rook felt like a cry for help, a desperate attempt to communicate something urgent when speech wasn't possible. Back in her cruiser, she carefully bagged the evidence and started her report. But her gaze kept drifting to Rook in the rearview mirror. Her partner sat straight-backed and alert, still carrying whatever burden of knowledge the boy had shared through those desperate taps. "We're not letting this one go, are we?" she murmured. Rook's soft whine was all the answer she needed. Whatever lay beneath the surface of this crash, they would uncover it together. The morning traffic was beginning to pick up as she pulled away from the scene. In her mind, the rhythm of the boy's tapping played on repeat. 3 quick, 3 slow, 3 quick. A message in the darkness, waiting to be decoded. And somehow, she knew, that message was just the first thread in a much larger tapestry of secrets. The fluorescent lights of the police station hummed overhead as Ren stood before Chief Merrick's desk, her back straight and shoulders squared. The morning's crash scene evidence lay spread between them, the torn wristband, the key fob, and her preliminary report. "With all due respect, Chief, I know what I saw," Ren said, keeping her voice steady despite her growing frustration. "That boy was using a specific tactical communication pattern with Rook. It's part of our advanced canine training protocols." Chief Merrick leaned back in his chair, his silver hair catching the harsh office lighting. His polished nameplate gleamed on the desk as he offered what seemed like a sympathetic smile, but something in his eyes remained cold. "Officer Calloway, you've had a long morning," he said, his tone carefully measured. "Trauma victims often exhibit involuntary movements. The boy was in shock, possibly seizing. Let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be." Ren felt her jaw tighten. "Sir, 3 quick taps, 3 slow, 3 quick. That's not random. That's a deliberate distress signal. Rook recognized it immediately. His posture changed completely." "Dogs pick up on all sorts of things," Merrick dismissed, shuffling papers on his desk. "Stress, fear, blood. Any number of factors could have triggered that response. A knock at the door interrupted them. Detective Eli Booker stood in the doorway, case file in hand. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it while reviewing evidence. "Chief," he nodded, then turned to Wren. "Officer Calloway, I've been looking over your initial report. Mind if I ask a few questions?" Merrick waved them both out, effectively ending the discussion. "Handle the routine investigation, Detective. But let's not waste resources chasing conspiracy theories." In the hallway, Wren fought to contain her disappointment. She'd hoped the chief would take her concerns seriously, given her track record. Eli gestured toward his office, and she followed, Rook padding silently beside her. "Tell me about the tapping again," Eli said once they were seated in his cramped but organized space. "Walk me through exactly what you saw." Wren described the scene in detail. The boy's focused gaze, the precise rhythm of his fingers, Rook's immediate shift in behavior. As she spoke, Eli took notes, his expression thoughtful rather than dismissive. "Look," he said finally, "I'm not entirely convinced about secret K-9 codes, but something about this case feels off." He turned his computer monitor so she could see it. "The rehab center on that wristband? Valley Hope? It closed down 3 months ago." Wren leaned forward. "What?" "Lost their funding, supposedly. But here's where it gets interesting. Their patient records were never properly transferred, just disappeared into the system." "So we can't identify the boy through their database," Wren said, connecting the dots. Eli nodded. "And the hospital's not being particularly helpful. I tried to get more information about his condition, but they've got security posted. Won't let anyone near him except medical staff." "That seems excessive for a car crash victim," Wren mused. "My thoughts exactly." Eli pulled up another screen. "I've been doing some digging on Valley Hope. Their funding came through a private foundation called Hawthorne Initiatives." Wren pulled out the key fob with its hawk emblem. "Think there's a connection?" "Could be." Eli studied the fob. "High-end security chip in that thing. Military-grade encryption. Way more sophisticated than your average car key." Wren felt a chill despite the warm office. "The chief seemed awfully quick to shut down any deeper investigation." "Yeah, well, Merrick's always been big on efficiency," Eli said, making air quotes. "Doesn't like us spending time on cases that might not lead to quick closes." He paused, watching her carefully. "But if someone wanted to look into this unofficially..." "I would definitely be interested in comparing notes," Wren finished, meeting his gaze. A slight smile touched Eli's weathered features. "I thought you might say that." He pulled a drawer open and retrieved a small recorder. "Let's start with everything you remember about the crash scene. Every detail, no matter how small." For the next hour, they worked methodically through the evidence. Eli's analytical approach complemented Wren's instinctive observations. He asked smart questions about Rook's training, about the specific protocols the boy might have been referencing. "The thing is," Wren explained, "these aren't public knowledge. They're specialized communications developed for tactical K-9 units. Someone had to teach him that signal." "Which means he's connected to law enforcement somehow," Eli concluded. "Or military." "Exactly. And combined with that military-grade key fob, we've got more questions than answers." Eli ran, a hand through his hair, adding to its dishevelment. "I'll try to get more information about the hospital security detail. Who ordered it? Who's paying for it? You see what else you can find about Hawthorne Initiatives." Wren nodded, grateful to have found an ally who took her concerns seriously. "I'll check with some contacts in other K-9 units too. See if anyone's heard of civilian kids being taught these protocols." A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Through the office window, they could see Chief Merrick talking with 2 men in expensive suits. Something about their stance, the way they carried themselves, screamed federal involvement. Better make ourselves scarce, Eli murmured. Use my back door. I'll text you later about meeting somewhere off-site to compare notes. Wren gathered her things quickly, whistling softly for Rook to follow. As they slipped out through the emergency exit, she caught one last glimpse of the suited men through the window. They were showing Merrick some kind of badge or identification. In her patrol car, Wren sat for a moment with her hand on Rook's solid presence beside her. The morning's events played through her mind. The boy's desperate tapping, Merrick's dismissal, Eli's willingness to dig deeper. She had started her shift expecting a routine accident investigation. Now she was sneaking out of her own station, preparing to conduct an unofficial investigation behind her superior's back. But the image of that boy's eyes, fixed on Rook with such desperate purpose, wouldn't leave her. He had trusted them with a message. Whatever it cost her professionally, she couldn't ignore that trust. Rook's warm tongue touched her hand, as if sensing her thoughts. She scratched behind his ears, drawing comfort from their partnership. Looks like we've got some overtime ahead of us, boy, she said softly. You up for it? His quiet woof of agreement brought a smile to her face. Whatever they were getting into, at least they weren't facing it alone. With Eli's help and Rook's unwavering support, maybe they could uncover what that boy had risked everything to communicate. She started the engine, already planning her next moves. The truth was out there, hidden in the connections between a closed rehab center, a mysterious foundation, and a child who knew secret police protocols. She would find it, piece by piece, no matter who tried to stand in her way. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the station windows as Wren stood before Chief Merrick's desk, her back straight and shoulders set. Rook sat alertly at her side, his presence lending her strength. Officer Calloway, I've reviewed your supplementary report on the highway incident, Merrick said, his voice carrying across the open office space. Several other officers paused in their work, turning to watch. And frankly, I'm concerned about the resources you're attempting to allocate to what is clearly a straightforward case. Wren felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice steady. Sir, with respect, there are multiple indicators that this wasn't a simple accident. The specialized canine signals alone. Enough! Merrick's hand slammed onto his desk, making nearby coffee mugs rattle. This obsession with supposed secret codes is becoming an embarrassment to the department. The boy was clearly in shock, making involuntary movements. The talk screen came back positive. It's a drug-related crash, plain and simple. But sir, the security key was probably stolen. Merrick cut her off again. His voice dropped lower, taking on an edge of patronizing concern. Listen, Calloway, you're a good officer. Your work with the K9 unit has been exemplary. Don't throw away your reputation chasing conspiracy theories. Wren felt dozens of eyes on her. The public nature of this reprimand was deliberate, she realized. Merrick was making an example of her. The case is closed, he continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm ordering you to cease any further investigation. Is that clear? Rook's low growl vibrated against her leg. She placed a calming hand on his head, though inside she felt like growling too. Yes, sir, she managed, the words tasting bitter. Good. Dismissed. The walk back to her desk felt endless. Whispers followed in her wake. A few sympathetic glances met her eyes, but most of her colleagues quickly looked away, not wanting to be associated with her public dressing down. She spent the rest of her shift handling routine calls, trying to ignore the sting of humiliation. But her mind kept returning to the boy in the hospital, to the desperate purpose in his eyes as he tapped that message to Rook. Night had fallen by the time she finished her paperwork. Rather than heading home, she pointed her patrol car toward County General Hospital. She told herself she was just doing a routine drive-by, but deep down, something urged her to check on the boy. "What do you think, partner?" she asked Rook as they pulled into the parking lot. "Quick walk around the perimeter?" His ears pricked forward intently. She'd learned to trust his instincts. The hospital's evening shift was in full swing, but the pediatric wing seemed unusually quiet. As they approached the service entrance, Rook's posture suddenly changed. His muscles tensed, head lowering slightly. Two men in dark suits were speaking with a night nurse, showing what appeared to be identification. Something about their manner set off warning bells in Wren's mind. "We're his uncles," one was saying. "We've been trying to reach him since the accident." The nurse looked uncertain. "I'll need to verify this with—" "Here are the transfer papers," the second man interrupted smoothly, producing documents. "Signed by his primary physician. We're moving him to a private facility better equipped for his recovery." Wren's heart began to pound. The boy had no ID, no known family. These men couldn't be who they claimed. She stepped forward, Rook at her side. "Excuse me, gentlemen. Officer Calloway, K-9 unit. I'll need to see those documents." The men turned. For a split second, she caught a flash of something dangerous in their eyes before their expressions smoothed into practiced confusion. "Of course, officer," the first man said, reaching into his jacket. But instead of papers, he pulled something else, a small black device that looked like a taser. Rook's warning bark split the air as Wren reached for her weapon. The nurse screamed and ran. The second man lunged toward the boy's room, but Rook was faster. The German shepherd launched himself forward, powerful jaws clamping onto the man's arm. His partner raised the taser, but Wren had her gun drawn. "Police, freeze!" Instead, both men bolted. The one Rook had bitten wrenched free, leaving a piece of his sleeve in the dog's teeth. They disappeared down the stairwell as security alarms began blaring. Wren's hand shook slightly as she holstered her weapon. Hospital security converged on the scene, but she knew the men would be long gone. They were professionals, not common criminals. She looked down at the scrap of fabric Rook had captured. There was a tiny embroidered emblem near the cuff. A hawk, identical to the one on the key fob. "Good boy," she whispered, scratching behind Rook's ears. He pressed against her leg, still alert and protective. Security footage would later show the men entering through a restricted access door, using what appeared to be legitimate credentials. They knew the hospital's layout and protocols. This had been a carefully planned operation. As she sat in her car afterward, writing up yet another report she knew would be dismissed, Wren finally accepted the full weight of what she'd stumbled into. The boy wasn't just a victim, he was a target. And by interfering with whatever operation these men were part of, she had just made herself one too. Rook's head settled on her shoulder, his warm presence both comforting and grounding. She wrapped an arm around his solid frame, drawing strength from their partnership. "Looks like we're in this deep now, boy," she murmured. The gravity of her situation settled over her like a heavy blanket. She had defied her chief's direct orders, confronted armed men, and prevented what was likely meant to be a quiet disappearance. There would be consequences. But as she remembered the desperate rhythm the boy had tapped against Rook's paw, she knew she couldn't have done anything else. Whatever web of secrets and danger she had stumbled into, she was committed now. She would protect this child, uncover the truth, and face whatever came as a result. She started the engine, checking her mirrors carefully before pulling out of the parking lot. The night felt different now, darker, full of hidden threats. But she wasn't alone. She had Rook, she had Eli, and most importantly, she had the conviction that she was doing the right thing. As they drove through the quiet streets, her mind raced with questions. Who were those men? What was their connection to the mysterious Hawthorne initiatives? And most importantly, What did they want with an injured, mute boy who knew classified canine signals? The answers were out there somewhere, hidden in the shadows where powerful people did their business. Finding them would be dangerous, possibly career-ending, maybe worse. But she had sworn an oath to protect and serve. Sometimes that meant facing the darkness head-on, no matter the personal cost. The scrap of fabric with the hawk emblem lay on Wren's desk, taunting her. 3 days had passed since the attempted hospital abduction, and she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Rook sat alert beside her chair, his amber eyes fixed on the emblem as if it held answers. "What do you see, boy?" she whispered, running her fingers through his thick fur. Rook's ears perked up suddenly. He stood, nose twitching, and moved towards the evidence board where she'd pinned photos from the crash scene. His attention focused on the image of the graphite key fob they'd found in the boy's belongings. Wren leaned closer, comparing the hawk emblems. They were identical, clean, corporate-looking designs that seemed more suited to a luxury car dealership than a rehabilitation facility. "The impound lot," she breathed. Every vehicle involved in criminal cases went through the department's impound, if the boy had been escaping in a stolen car. She grabbed her jacket. "Come on, Rook." The city impound lot sprawled across 3 acres of cracked concrete on the industrial outskirts. Chain-link fence topped with razor wire enclosed rows of damaged and seized vehicles. At the gate, the afternoon shift guard barely glanced at her badge before waving her through. "Looking for something specific, Officer Calloway?" he called out. "Just following up on the Highway 27 crash," she answered, keeping her tone casual. "Need to double-check some details." The crash vehicle was easy to find, its crumpled front end still caked with mud from the ditch. Wren circled it slowly, while Rook sniffed the perimeter. Nothing jumped out as unusual until she reached the trunk. There, barely visible in the mangled metal, was a scratch pattern that matched the teeth of the key fob. She pulled out her phone and texted Eli. "Need you at the impound lot. Bring your laptop." 20 minutes later, his familiar pickup rolled through the gate. He joined her by the wrecked car, his expression questioning. "What have you got?" "Look at this." She pointed out the scratch marks. "The key fob we found? I think it's part of a set. This car was accessed multiple times with something similar." Eli nodded slowly. "Let me check something." He opened his laptop on the hood of a nearby sedan and pulled up the department's vehicle tracking system. "Every car here gets logged. Location found, dates moved, everything." While he worked, Wren and Rook began methodically checking other vehicles in the lot. The dog's training kicked in, treating it like a search grid. 3 rows in, he froze, hackles rising. "What is it, boy?" Rook led her to a stripped-down SUV. The interior had been gutted, but when she popped the hidden compartment under the spare tire well, her breath caught. A dozen graphite key fobs lay nestled in foam padding, each bearing the hawk emblem. "Eli," she called, "over here." He jogged over, laptop in hand. His eyes widened at the cache of fobs. "This is interesting. I've been mapping the GPS data from vehicles logged here in the past 6 months. There's a pattern. Regular routes between the rehab facility and spots all over the state. Always at night, always with different cars." Wren's stomach turned as the pieces clicked together. "They're moving kids. The rehabilitation program. It's a front for trafficking." "And the department's impound system provides untraceable vehicles," Eli added grimly. "Look at these timestamps. A new car every few weeks, always coinciding with reported transfers from the facility." "That's why the boy knew military K9 signals," Wren said. "He must have been held somewhere that used working dogs for security. He learned the codes and used them to call for help when he escaped." She photographed the hidden compartment and the fobs while Eli downloaded the GPS logs. The evidence was damning, and it went straight to the top. Chief Merrick controlled the impound lot. Nothing happened here without his knowledge. "We need to move these somewhere safe," she said, gathering the fobs. "Once they realize we found—" The crunch of tires on gravel cut her off. Headlights swept the lot as a vehicle approached. "Security patrol," Eli muttered. "They shouldn't be checking this section for another hour." Wren quickly replaced the fobs and closed the compartment. "Rook, hide," she commanded. The Shepherd melted into the shadows between vehicles. A spotlight beam pierced the gathering dusk. "Officer Calloway," a voice called out. "Chief Merrick wants to see you, now." She exchanged glances with Eli. They both knew this wasn't a coincidence. "I'll be right there," she answered, keeping her voice steady. Quietly, she whispered to Eli. "Get copies of everything to someone we can trust. I'll stall as long as I can." He squeezed her arm. "Be careful." Wren walked toward the patrol car, her boots crunching on broken glass. Behind her, Rook remained hidden, watching. She could feel the weight of what they'd discovered settling around her shoulders. The boy hadn't been in a random crash. He'd been fighting for his freedom. And now she knew why so many people wanted to silence him. The spotlight still blinded her as she approached. She couldn't see the officer's face, but she recognized the voice. Officer Jensen, one of Merrick's most loyal deputies. "The chief's been trying to reach you," he said. "Your radio's off." "Battery died," she lied. "I was just finishing up here." "I'll escort you back to the station." It wasn't a request. As she climbed into her cruiser, Wren caught a glimpse of Eli slipping away through the rows of cars, Rook a shadow at his heels. They had the evidence now. The question was whether she'd have time to use it before Merrick realized how much they'd found. The drive back to the station felt like a funeral procession, Jensen's patrol car close behind her the entire way. The setting sun painted the sky blood red, its light reflecting off the mirrored windows of the police headquarters building as they pulled into the parking lot. Each step toward Merrick's office felt heavier than the last. But Wren kept her head high, her expression neutral. She had sworn to protect the innocent and uphold justice. Whatever came next, she would face it knowing she had done the right thing. The truth about the trafficking network was out there now, documented in GPS logs and photographs. Even if Merrick tried to bury it, the evidence would speak for itself. She just had to stay alive long enough for Eli to get it to the right people. She knocked on the chief's door, her knuckles rapping against the frosted glass that bore his name in gold letters. His voice, smooth as aged whiskey but twice as dangerous, called out, "Come in, Officer Calloway." The Hillcrest Rehabilitation Center loomed against the afternoon sky, its modern glass facade reflecting clouds that promised rain. Wren adjusted her maintenance worker's uniform, borrowed from the City Works Department, while Eli double-checked his clipboard and fake building inspector badge. "Security cameras are on a 10-second sweep," Wren said quietly, watching the mounted devices. "We'll have a blind spot at the service entrance in 3, 2, 1. They slipped through the door, their borrowed keycards working perfectly. The stark fluorescent lights illuminated pristine hallways that smelled of industrial cleaner and artificial air freshener. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. "Remember," Eli muttered as they walked, "Dr. Pike does her rounds at 3 o'clock. We need to be in and out before then." Wren nodded, her body camera carefully concealed beneath her uniform. Her heart pounded, but her steps remained steady. Years of K-9 training had taught her how to project calm, even when adrenaline coursed through her veins. They passed nurses' stations and therapy rooms, all spotless and professional. Young patients in matching sweatsuits shuffled by, their eyes downcast. None of them looked up or acknowledged the presence of strangers, behavior that sent warning signals through Wren's mind. "Through here," Eli whispered, gesturing to a maintenance door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The lock clicked open with their stolen keycard. The difference was immediate. The polished veneer of the main facility gave way to bare concrete and exposed pipes. Emergency lights cast everything in a sickly green glow. The air felt thicker, staler. "Look at this," Wren said, pointing to wheel marks on the floor. "Heavy equipment's been through here recently." They followed the tracks to another secure door. Through its narrow window, they could see into what appeared to be a loading dock, but it wasn't marked on any building plans they'd found. "Got it," Eli murmured, working the lock. Inside, the space was clinical and cold. Metal tables lined one wall, filing cabinets filled another, and at the far end, a large garage door opened onto a private drive hidden from the main entrance. Wren's trained eye took in details: medical supplies, restraints, paperwork with foreign addresses. "This isn't a rehabilitation center," she breathed. "It's a processing facility. Over here." Eli was at a computer terminal. "Transfer schedules. They're moving kids out tonight. 3 of them." Wren leaned in to look, her body camera capturing everything. The schedule showed regular departures, coded destinations, price points attached to each name. Her stomach churned at the clinical efficiency of it all. A noise from above made them both freeze. Through the ceiling vents came the sharp click of heels on tile. "Dr. Pike," Eli mouthed silently. They ducked behind a row of cabinets as voices drifted down from the main floor. Through gaps in the metal, Wren could see a security feed showing Dr. Corinne Pike at her desk, speaking into a phone. "Yes, tonight's shipment is still on schedule," the director was saying. 3 packages, all properly documented as medical transfers. The paperwork's clean." Wren's fingers tightened on her concealed camera. Every word was being recorded. "The accident last week was unfortunate," Pike continued, "but contained. The boy won't be talking to anyone. Make sure our friends at the department keep it that way." A sudden beeping made Wren's blood run cold. On Pike's desk, a security monitor had flashed red. The system had detected unauthorized access in the sub-level. "We've got company," Pike's voice sharpened. "I'll call you back." "Time to go," Eli whispered urgently. They moved quickly but quietly toward the maintenance tunnel entrance. Behind them, doors began slamming open as security responded to the alert. "Split up," Wren said, as they reached a junction in the tunnels. "I've got the evidence on my camera. You find another way out and call for backup." Eli hesitated. "Wren." "Go," she insisted. "We can't let them get both of us." He squeezed her arm once, then disappeared down the left passage. Wren took the right, her boots silent on the concrete floor. Her police training kicked in. Steady breathing, careful movement, stay focused. The tunnel network was a maze, but she'd memorized the maintenance maps. 2 more turns would take her to an exit near the parking lot. She could hear voices echoing through the ventilation system, orders being barked, doors being searched. She rounded the final corner and stopped dead. Dr. Pike stood at the tunnel's end, flanked by 2 security guards. The director's perfectly composed face showed only mild disappointment. "Officer Calloway," Pike said smoothly, "I'm afraid you've wandered into a restricted area. Though I suspect that was rather the point, wasn't it?" "It's over, Dr. Pike," Wren replied, standing her ground. "We have proof of what you're doing here, all of it." "Proof?" Pike's smile didn't reach her eyes. "All you have is trespassing charges and a career-ending scandal. Such a shame. You had such potential." The guards moved forward, but Wren was already backing away. There was another route, maintenance ladder to the surface, 2 junctions back. She'd seen it on the maps. "Get her," Pike ordered sharply, "and find her partner. No one leaves with any recordings." Wren turned and ran, her footsteps echoing off concrete walls. The guard's heavier boots pounded behind her. She reached the junction, grabbed the ladder rungs, and pulled herself up with desperate strength. The maintenance hatch at the top burst open to gray sky and fresh air. She emerged into a service alley behind the main building, rolled to her feet, and sprinted toward the street. Her body camera bounced against her chest, carrying the weight of everything they'd discovered. Behind her, alarms began to sound throughout the facility. But she could see Eli's car at the end of the block. Engine already running. They had what they needed. The truth about Hillcrest would finally come to light. She just had to make it there first. The sound of pursuing footsteps grew closer as Wren ran, her lungs burning with each breath. The evidence was secured. Now she just had to survive long enough to use it. Chief Vance Merrick's office felt colder than usual as Wren stood at attention, her badge and service weapon already surrendered to internal affairs. Morning sunlight streamed through the Venetian blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the polished desk. Breaking and entering, unauthorized surveillance, tampering with private medical records. Merrick's voice was calm, almost paternal, as he read from the complaint form. "What were you thinking, Officer Calloway?" "Sir, we found evidence of a licensed rehabilitation facility conducting routine patient transfers." He closed the file with deliberate care. "Instead of following proper channels, you chose to stage an illegal raid based on conspiracy theories about a car accident victim." Wren's jaw tightened. "That boy was trying to tell us something. The key fobs, the GPS routes, are part of their standard transportation service." Merrick stood, his imposing frame blocking the light. "Your suspension is effective immediately. 30 days, pending review. Consider yourself lucky it's not permanent." "Chief, they're moving kids through that facility. Detective Booker saw the same." "Detective Booker," Merrick cut in, "has received his own warning about enabling your unprofessional conduct. This ends now. Calloway." In the hallway outside, Wren saw Eli being escorted from his desk by internal affairs. Their eyes met briefly. His filled with quiet anger, hers with determination. They couldn't stop now. Not when they were so close. Back at her apartment, Wren paced restlessly while Rook watched from his bed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eli. "Meeting tonight, hospital, 8 p.m. The hours crawled by. Without her badge, she felt naked, vulnerable. But they still had the body camera footage. If they could just keep the boy safe long enough to build their case. The hospital corridor was quiet when she arrived, her civilian clothes feeling strange after years in uniform. Eli waited by the nurse's station, his face grim. "They're watching us," he said softly as she approached. "Internal affairs pulled my cases. They're building obstruction charges." "Merrick's trying to bury this," Wren replied. "We need to get that boy's statement before—" The fluorescent lights flickered, plunging the hall into momentary darkness. When they came back on, emergency generators hummed to life. "That's not right," Eli muttered. "Hospitals have backup systems." They rushed to the boy's room. The bed was empty, sheets still warm. On the bedside table, his chart had vanished. "Security footage," Wren said urgently. They sprinted to the monitoring station, flashing Eli's badge to get access. The playback showed what they feared. 20 minutes earlier, an ambulance crew had wheeled the boy out on a gurney. The transfer order looked perfect. Hospital letterhead, doctor's signature, all the proper stamps. "They're moving him," Eli growled, "using the power outage for cover." Wren was already running, Rook at her heels. The service elevator took them to the loading dock just as a white ambulance pulled away, its lights dark. "Rook, track," she commanded. The German Shepherd's nose went to the ground, following the distinctive scent they'd first encountered at the crash site. They raced through the parking structure, past startled hospital staff, toward the exit ramp. The ambulance's taillights disappeared around a corner. Wren's lungs burned as she ran, but she couldn't lose them. That boy had trusted them, had risked everything to signal for help. She was all he had left. Rook barked sharply. The ambulance had turned north toward the interstate, but without her cruiser, without her badge, without backup. She skidded to a stop at the parking lot's edge, watching helplessly as the vehicle vanished into traffic, her hands clenched into fists. They'd taken him right out from under their noses. "Wren," Eli's voice carried from behind her. He pulled up in his unmarked car, driver's door already open. "Get in." She and Rook jumped in as Eli hit the gas. The car surged forward, weaving through traffic in pursuit of the ambulance. "They'll be watching for my plates," he said grimly. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before Merrick knows we're following." Wren pulled out her phone, documenting everything. The fake transfer, the power outage, the ambulance's plate number. They couldn't stop this removal, but they could prove it happened. "They're not just covering their tracks anymore," she said, watching the ambulance's distant form. "They're sending us a message. Anyone who gets close disappears." "Then we'll have to get more than close," Eli replied, his hands tight on the wheel. "We'll have to take them down completely." The ambulance merged onto the interstate, its white form blending with dozens of other vehicles. But Wren's eyes stayed locked on it, memorizing every detail. They'd taken her badge, her authority, her ability to protect. But they couldn't take her determination. That boy had reached out to them in his darkest moment, believing they would help. And suspended or not, she would prove that trust wasn't misplaced. The chase continued north, each mile carrying them further from safety and deeper into whatever darkness waited ahead. But Wren felt a strange calm settle over her. This wasn't just about one case anymore. This was about every child who'd vanished into Hillcrest's system, every life disrupted by Merrick's corruption. Rook pressed against her leg, his presence steady and reassuring. The same way he'd understood the boy's tapped message, he seemed to understand her resolve now. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The ambulance was 5 car lengths ahead, maintaining perfect traffic laws to avoid attention. But Wren could imagine the scene inside. The boy, scared and alone, being transported to some new facility where his silence would be guaranteed. "We're not letting them win," she said quietly, more to herself than to Eli. "Not this time." Her phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered on speaker. "Officer Calloway." Dr. Pike's smooth voice filled the car. "I'd strongly recommend you turn around now. Some paths are better left unexplored." "You can't hide this forever," Wren replied evenly. "The truth's already out there." "Truth?" Pike laughed softly. "You have speculation and trespassing charges. We have contracts, licenses, and friends in high places. Choose your next moves carefully." The line went dead. Eli's jaw clenched as he focused on keeping the ambulance in sight without drawing attention. "They're not even trying to deny it anymore," he said, "just threatening us openly. Because they think they're untouchable." Wren watched the ambulance signal for an exit. "But everyone has a weak point. We just have to find theirs." They followed at a distance as the ambulance wound through surface streets, heading toward the industrial district. The sun had set, leaving them in a world of shadows and streetlights. Wren thought of the boy's fingers tapping against Rook's paw, a cry for help in a language few would understand. He'd trusted them to decode that message, to follow where it led. Now, suspended and stripped of power, she could only watch as he was taken beyond her reach. But this wasn't over. Not while she still had breath to fight and truth to expose. The ambulance's taillights glowed like angry eyes in the gathering dark. Somewhere ahead lay answers. About Hillcrest, about Merrick, about a system that turned rehabilitation into trafficking. They just had to stay alive long enough to find them. The ambulance's brake lights flared as it slowed for a construction zone. Eli eased off the gas, maintaining their careful distance while Wren studied the road ahead. Orange cones funneled traffic into a single lane, creating a natural bottleneck. "This is our chance," Wren said, her voice tight with urgency. "They'll have to slow down even more through that merge point." Rook stood alert in the back seat, sensing the growing tension. Eli nodded grimly, accelerating to close the gap between their vehicles. "Once we're parallel, I'll force them onto the shoulder," he said. "But Wren, this is way beyond procedure. If anything goes wrong..." "They're counting on procedure to protect them," she cut in. "That's how they've gotten away with this for so long." The ambulance crawled forward as construction forced it to brake again. Eli swung their car into the passing lane, drawing even with the emergency vehicle's cab. Through the darkened windows, Wren caught a glimpse of two men in paramedic uniforms, neither matching legitimate hospital staff. Eli jerked the wheel hard, forcing the ambulance toward the shoulder. The larger vehicle swerved, its tires catching the gravel with a spray of stones. For a heart-stopping moment, Wren thought it might flip. Instead, it skidded to an angled stop, horn blaring in protest. Before the fake paramedics could react, Wren was out of the car with Rook at her side. She yanked open the driver's door, finding exactly what she expected: armed men in stolen uniforms, reaching for concealed weapons. "Police! Hands where I can see them!" she commanded, though the words felt hollow without her badge. Still, Rook's deep growl added weight to her authority. The driver froze, recognizing the German shepherd's focused intensity. His partner was slower to comply, and Rook's growl deepened to a snarl. "The dog's combat trained," Wren warned. "Make one wrong move and he'll take you down before you clear leather." Eli appeared at the passenger door, his own weapon drawn. "Out. Slowly. Face down on the ground." As they secured the men, Wren's heart pounded with urgency to check the back of the ambulance. She left Eli covering the suspects and hurried to the rear doors, Rook close behind. Inside, strapped to a gurney, lay the boy from the crash. An IV line fed clear liquid into his arm, his skin pale under harsh fluorescent lights. But his chest rose and fell steadily. Alive, just heavily sedated. "Hey there," Wren said softly, climbing in beside him. "We're going to get you out of here, okay?" His eyelids flickered, fighting against the drugs. Then, with visible effort, his hand moved toward Rook, who had followed Wren into the ambulance. Wren held her breath as the boy's fingers found Rook's paw. Even through the sedation, his movements were deliberate. Tap-tap, pause, tap-tap-tap. The same rhythm from the crash scene. Rook's response was immediate. His ears pricked forward, and he gave two sharp barks followed by a lower whine, a specific pattern that Wren had never heard him use before. "That's a training code," she whispered, pieces clicking into place. "Advanced canine communication signals." The boy's fingers twitched in what might have been a nod. Wren quickly documented the interaction on her phone, knowing it could be crucial evidence. "Wren," Eli called from outside. "We need to move. Highway Patrol will be here soon, and we can't explain this." She nodded, already working to disconnect the IV while keeping her phone recording. "Help me get him into your car. We need to find somewhere safe until he's coherent." As they carefully transferred the boy to Eli's back seat, Wren's mind raced. The coded signals, the professional canine response. This was no random victim. Someone had taught him those commands. They drove to a small veterinary clinic where Eli knew the owner, someone who wouldn't ask questions. While the boy slept off the sedatives under monitoring, Wren dug through personnel records on her laptop, looking for any connection between K-9 training and Hillcrest Rehabilitation Center. "Got something," she said finally, turning the screen so Eli could see. Rowan Kett. She was a police K-9 instructor until 2 years ago, specialized in silent communication techniques for tactical operations. The image showed a confident woman with short blonde hair and steady eyes, standing beside a row of training dogs. Something about her stance, the set of her jaw, reminded Wren of the boy. "Says here she died in a house fire," Eli read, frowning. "Right after filing internal reports about irregularities in youth transport protocols, reports that went straight to Merrick's division." Wren's hands tightened on the laptop. "Not a fire, a warning. And that boy in there, he's her son, the last witness to whatever she uncovered." "A witness who can't speak," Eli added quietly, "but who knows every silent command his mother taught her dogs." The revelation hit Wren like a physical blow. This wasn't just about trafficking anymore. This was about a mother who died trying to protect children, and a son who survived to carry her message. In the next room, Rook lay beside the boy's bed, alert and watchful. The dog understood something Wren was only now realizing. This connection went deeper than training. It was about trust and sacrifice, and a language of survival passed from mother to child. "That's why they want him so badly," she said. "He knows everything. The routes, the facilities, the people involved. His mother made sure he could communicate it, even if he couldn't. Speak." Eli leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "And he chose to trust you and Rook. Out of everyone at that crash scene, he recognized a K-9 team that might understand his message." Wren watched through the doorway as the boy's fingers curled loosely in Rook's fur, both of them resting but ready. In that moment, she made a silent promise to Rowan Kett's memory. Her son's trust wouldn't be misplaced. Whatever it took, they would finish what she started, exposing the truth about Merrick's empire and bringing justice to those who silenced her. The boy stirred slightly, his other hand moving in that now familiar rhythm against Rook's paw. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. A message repeated, waiting for someone to finally hear it. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cast harsh shadows across the trauma unit's corridor as Wren and Eli walked briskly toward room 312. Their footsteps echoed against the polished floors, matching the steady beeping of medical equipment behind closed doors. "Jane Doe admission papers are filed," Eli said quietly, passing Wren a manila folder. "Dr. Caroline Myers owes me a favor from an old case. She'll keep him off the main registry." Wren nodded, thumbing through the documents. "Smart using a female designation. They'll be looking for a male patient." Inside the room, Rook lay stretched across the foot of the hospital bed, his amber eyes tracking their entrance. The boy, still unnamed in their documentation, was finally awake, though groggy. An IV dripped clear fluids into his arm, helping flush the remaining sedatives from his system. "Hey there," Wren said softly, approaching the bedside. "Feeling any better?" The boy's eyes met hers, alert despite his exhaustion. His hand moved deliberately to Rook's paw, tapping out that now familiar rhythm. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. "He hasn't left that spot since we brought him in," Eli observed, watching Rook's protective posture. "It's like he recognizes something in the kid." "He does," Wren replied. "Rowan Kett trained both military and police canines. Rook probably worked with her at some point. Dogs remember their trainers and their families." She pulled a chair closer to the bed, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. On the bedside table, she spread out the evidence they'd gathered. Photos of the impound lot, GPS logs, the graphite key fob with its hawk emblem. "We're starting to understand what your mom discovered," she told the boy gently. "But we need your help filling in the gaps. Can you work with Rook to tell us more?" The boy studied the photos intently, then reached for Rook again. What followed was a complex series of taps and touches, each one triggering specific responses from the dog. Wren recorded everything on her phone while Eli took notes. "The rehab facility is just the first step," Wren said after several minutes, piecing it together. "They identify vulnerable kids, ones without strong family connections. The treatment program is really just processing, getting paperwork in order, creating false histories." Eli nodded grimly. "Then they move them through the impound network. Those dismantled cars we found? Perfect hiding spots for supplies, documents, maybe even temporary holding areas. The key fobs must track each shipment." "And the fake guardians close the loop," Wren continued. "They show up with perfect paperwork, medical transfer orders, everything needed to make the disappearances look legitimate." The boy's fingers tightened in Rook's fur, his other hand moving in a new pattern. The dog growled softly, then gave 3 sharp barks. "What was that?" Eli asked. Wren's expression hardened. "Warning signal. He's telling us what happens to anyone who tries to expose the operation." She pulled up another file on her phone, a series of missing persons reports spanning the past 2 years. Young faces stared back at them, each one connected to either the rehab center or the transport network. "Every single one who might have talked," she said quietly. "Just gone. No bodies, no evidence. Professional cleanup." The boy nodded slowly, his face reflecting a knowledge no child should have to carry. His fingers found Rook's paw again, but this time the pattern was different. Longer, more complex. Rook's response was immediate. He rose to his full height, positioning himself between the bed and the door, every muscle taut with protective intensity. A low rumble vibrated in his chest. "What did he tell him?" Eli asked, watching the dog's transformation. "Guard command," Wren replied. "High-level protection protocol. Rook won't let anyone near that bed without direct clearance now." She reached out slowly, letting her hand rest near the boy's. He didn't pull away. "Your mom taught you well," she said softly. "She made sure you'd have a way to fight back, even if you couldn't speak. And now we're going to help you finish what she started." The boy's fingers moved to grasp hers, squeezing once. In that simple gesture, Wren felt the weight of his trust and the responsibility that came with it. "We need to move him soon," Eli said, checking his watch. "Even with the Jane Doe paperwork, we can't risk keeping him here too long." Wren nodded, but her eyes stayed on the boy. "I know a place. My mom's old cabin up near Lake Erie. Remote, defensible, and completely off any official records." "You're talking about going off-grid," Eli warned. "Against direct orders, with evidence that implicates the chief of police in human trafficking. That's not just career suicide. It's dangerous." "Look at him, Eli," Wren said quietly. "Really look. He's what, 12? 13? Old enough to understand everything that's happening, young enough to be completely vulnerable without help. His mother died trying to protect kids just like him. Are we going to do any less?" The boy watched their exchange intently, his hand still holding Wren's. Rook remained at attention, a living barrier between his charge and the door. "We'll need supplies," Eli said finally. "Medical equipment, food, secure communications, and we'll have to move at night when shift change gives us the best cover." Wren felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he replied. "This is just the beginning. Once we move him, we're committed. No backing out, no matter how ugly it gets." "I know." Wren squeezed the boy's hand gently. "But he trusted us with his mother's message. That makes him our responsibility now. Whatever it takes, we're seeing this through." The boy's fingers moved against her palm. Tap, tap. Pause. tap, tap, tap. The same signal that had started everything at the crash scene. But now Wren understood it wasn't just a call for help. It was a promise, passed from mother to son, carried through silence and sacrifice, waiting for someone brave enough to hear it. Rook's steady presence, the boy's trusting grip, Eli's quiet support. They formed a circle of protection around that hospital bed. A new family forged in crisis, bound by a shared commitment to justice. "Rest while you can," Wren told the boy. "Tonight we start fighting back." His eyes met hers, clear and determined despite everything he'd endured. In them she saw not just the victim they'd rescued, but the survivor who would help them bring down an empire built on stolen lives. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The night air hung thick with tension as Wren and Eli crouched behind their unmarked vehicle, parked 2 blocks from the city impound lot. Rook sat perfectly still between them, his amber eyes fixed on the chain-link fence ahead. "Judge Martinez's warrant came through 10 minutes ago," Eli whispered, checking his phone one last time. "We have full authority to search and document everything inside that office." Wren adjusted her body camera, making sure the lens was clear. "How long before Merrick finds out his friend on the bench got overruled?" "Maybe an hour. The night clerk should be doing his rounds now. We go in fast, quiet, and thorough." They moved like shadows across the empty street. The impound lot sprawled across 3 acres, rows of damaged and seized vehicles creating a maze of metal and rust. Security lights cast yellow pools between the vacant spaces, but the office itself sat dark. Rook took point, padding silently ahead as Wren and Eli followed. His training showed in every controlled movement. No barking, no unnecessary sounds. At the fence, he waited while Eli worked the lock with a set of department-issued keys. "Night clerk's route takes him past here in 20 minutes, Eli murmured. "That's our window." The gate swung open with only the faintest creak. They slipped inside, staying close to the shadows of crushed cars and twisted guardrails. Each step brought them closer to the small cinder-block building that served as the lot's office. Wren's heart pounded, but her hands remained steady. Everything they'd uncovered, the boy's escape, his mother's death, the rehab center's secret transfers, all of it led here. To this quiet building with its mundane exterior and dark secrets. "Rook, guard," she commanded in a whisper. The German shepherd immediately took up position near the corner, his posture alert but relaxed enough not to draw attention. The office door yielded to another key from Eli's ring. Inside, the air smelled of old coffee and paper. Wren's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a typical bureaucratic space: desk, filing cabinets, ancient computer monitor. "Start with the most recent files," Eli directed, moving to the filing cabinet while Wren approached the desk. "They'll keep anything important close at hand." She began opening drawers, her camera recording every movement. Standard forms, maintenance logs, vehicle registration papers. Nothing unusual at first glance. But in the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of blank citations, she found it. "Eli," she breathed. "Here." The ledger was thick, bound in black leather that showed wear along the edges. No labels, no identifying marks on the cover. But inside, page after page of careful notations stretched back months. Initials, dates, location codes, numbers that couldn't possibly be vehicle identification numbers. They were too short, too systematic. "They weren't even trying to hide it," Eli said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Look at these dates. They match perfectly with the rehab center's transfer records." Wren's fingers trembled slightly as she turned the pages. Each entry represented a life, someone's child, someone's future, reduced to a few cryptic letters and numbers. "Cameras getting all this?" Eli asked. She nodded, angling the light to capture every detail. Crystal clear, timestamps and GPS coordinates embedded in each frame. A soft growl from outside froze them both. Rook's warning signal, someone approaching. They worked faster, Wren photographing while Eli cross-referenced dates with his phone. The evidence mounted with each page, routes, destinations, payments coded as processing fees. This goes higher than Merrick, Eli whispered. Way higher. These authorization codes, they're federal level. Another growl, slightly louder. Wren's hands moved faster, capturing everything she could. The ledger detailed a network that stretched across state lines, using official channels to move products with ruthless efficiency. Footsteps crunched on gravel outside. Rook remained silent now, waiting, watching. Wren's heart thundered in her ears as she photographed the final pages. Time to go, Eli breathed, already moving towards the back door. Wren carefully replaced the ledger exactly as she'd found it, making sure nothing looked disturbed. They couldn't risk tipping their hand too soon. Not when they were this close. They slipped out the rear entrance just as a key rattled in the front lock. The night clerk's flashlight beam swept across the office they'd vacated seconds before. Rook met them behind the building, falling into step as they wound their way back through the maze of vehicles. Every shadow seemed to hold potential danger now, every distant sound a possible threat. But they had it. Proof. Hard evidence that could tear down not just Merrick's operation, but an entire system of exploitation hidden behind badges and paperwork. The walk back to their vehicle felt endless, though it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. Only when they were blocks away, with the impound lot safely behind them, did Wren allow herself to breathe normally again. Send backup copies of everything, she told Eli. Different servers, different locations. If they come after one, we need the others to survive. He was already typing on his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's blue glow. Done. 3 secure drops, encrypted files. Even if they trace one, the others are safe. Wren reached down to scratch behind Rook's ears, her hand still trembling slightly from adrenaline. The dog leaned into her touch, solid and reassuring. You did good, boy, she whispered. Perfect guard work. The evidence they'd gathered felt almost physical in its weight. Each photograph, each carefully documented page representing another crack in the foundation of Merrick's power. What happens when he realizes what we have? Eli asked quietly. Wren watched the city lights blur past their window. He'll come after us with everything he's got, but we have something he doesn't. What's that? The truth, she said simply. And people willing to die protecting it. The camera's memory card pressed against her chest, where she'd secured it in her inner pocket. Small, insignificant-looking piece of plastic and circuits, but loaded with enough evidence to shatter an empire built on stolen lives. For the first time since finding the boy in that crashed car, Wren felt the balance of power shift. They weren't just fighting shadows anymore. They had names, dates, proof that would stand up in any court. Rook's steady breathing filled the car's silence as they drove through the sleeping city. Whatever came next, they'd crossed a line tonight. There was no going back, only forward, toward whatever justice they could wrest from the darkness. The fluorescent lights of the police station hummed overhead as Wren organized the evidence on her desk. Her hands moved with careful precision, arranging photographs and documents in chronological order. Each piece told part of a story that would bring down Merrick's entire operation. Files are uploaded and secured, Eli said, closing his laptop. We should have everything ready for the DA by morning. Rook lay at Wren's feet, alert despite the late hour. The dog's ears twitched at every sound from the nearly empty building. The main doors burst open with a bang that echoed through the station. Chief. Merrick strode in, flanked by 4 men in hazmat suits. The sight was so unexpected that Wren froze for a split second, just long enough for them to reach her desk. "Everyone out!" Merrick's voice boomed through the space. "Fuel leak detected at the impound lot. Immediate evacuation ordered." Wren's heart rate spiked. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The timing was too perfect, too convenient. "Chief, I need to secure these files first," she began, reaching for the evidence. Merrick's hand slammed down on the stack of papers. "That's an order, Officer Calloway. The fumes could be toxic. Clear the building now." The hazmat team was already moving through the station, herding the few remaining officers toward the exits. Eli caught Wren's eye from across the room, his expression matching her concern. "Rook, come," Wren commanded, but her voice wavered slightly. The German Shepherd rose, hackles raising as one of the hazmat workers approached too closely. They had no choice but to leave. The evidence would be safe enough in the locked building, or so Wren told herself, as they were hustled outside into the cool night air. But something made her turn back. Through the glass doors, she saw Merrick still inside, moving quickly between desks. The hazmat team was spreading something, not containing a leak, but distributing it. "No," she whispered, then louder, "No." She sprinted back toward the building, Rook at her heels. The doors were already locked, but she had her key card. Inside, the sharp smell of gasoline hit her like a wall. "Stop!" she shouted, but Merrick and his men were already disappearing through the back entrance toward the impound lot. Eli's voice crackled through her radio. "Wren, get out of there! They're setting it up to burn!" She grabbed what she could from her desk, her camera, a handful of photos, when the first explosion rocked the building. Fire roared through the hallway connecting the station to the impound lot, feeding on the trail of fuel. Smoke filled the air as Wren ran toward the impound, Rook leading the way. They had to stop Merrick, had to save what evidence remained in the lot itself. The impound lot was already an inferno. Flames leapt between vehicles, paint bubbling and tires exploding in the heat. Through the smoke and fire, Wren caught glimpses of dark figures moving with purpose, Merrick's men, ensuring nothing survived. "Up there!" she shouted to Rook, spotting movement on the catwalk that crossed the lot. They raced up the metal stairs, heat searing through their shoes. But they'd been seen. A figure emerged from the smoke, one of the hazmat team, but the suit was gone now, revealing tactical gear underneath. He swung a heavy pipe at Rook. The dog dodged, but the catwalk's railing had become scorching hot. As Rook swerved to avoid the blow, his shoulder hit the burning metal. With a yelp of pain, he lost his balance and fell. "Rook!" Wren's scream tore at her throat as she watched her partner disappear into the smoke below. The man with the pipe advanced on her, but Wren's world had narrowed to the space where Rook had fallen. She ducked under the swing, grabbed the man's arm, and used his own momentum to send him staggering into the railing. She half climbed, half fell down the stairs, calling Rook's name. The smoke was thicker at ground level, making her eyes stream and her lungs burn. A familiar bark answered her, rough but alive. She found Rook limping but standing, his fur singed but no serious injuries visible. That's when she heard it. An engine starting, followed by the heavy rumble of a large vehicle. Through the gaps between burning cars, she caught sight of a transport truck, and through its back windows, illuminated by the fire, a small, familiar face. "The boy!" She started running, but a wall of flame erupted between her and the truck. The heat drove her back, singeing her eyebrows and hair. Merrick's voice carried through the roar of the fire. "It's over, Calloway. Walk away while you still can." The transport truck's engine revved. She tried to circle around the flames, but every path was blocked. The ledger, the photos, the computer files, all gone. and now they had the boy again. Wren's lungs screamed for clean air. The fire was spreading faster now, consuming everything in its path. Rook pressed against her legs, urging her toward the exit. They barely made it out. Behind them, the impound lot became a funeral pyre for the truth they'd worked so hard to uncover. The transport truck was long gone, leaving only tire tracks in the gravel. Eli found them sitting on the curb half a block away. Emergency vehicles screamed past, too late to save anything important. Wren's hands shook as she pressed an oxygen mask to her face, watching their evidence burn. "What do we do now?" Eli asked quietly, his own voice rough from smoke. Wren looked down at Rook, who met her gaze steadily despite his injuries. Everything they'd built, every piece of proof they'd gathered, destroyed in minutes, and somewhere in the night, a transport truck carried away their only living witness. She had nothing left except a wounded dog, a handful of scorched photographs, and the burning certainty that she couldn't let Merrick win. But for the first time since this case began, she had no idea how to fight back. The fire painted the night sky orange, reflecting off windows and turning the world into something alien and hostile. Wren watched it burn, each flame another piece of hope turning to ash. Wren sat in her car, the acrid smell of smoke still clinging to her clothes and hair. Her hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. Rook lay in the back seat, his breathing steady despite his singed fur and minor injuries. The orange glow of the burning impound lot still painted the horizon behind them, a stark reminder of how thoroughly Merrick had destroyed their evidence. But something nagged at her mind, a memory trying to surface through the fog of exhaustion and defeat. She closed her eyes, letting her thoughts drift back to the research she'd done on Rowan Kett, the boy's mother. "The training tapes," she whispered suddenly, sitting up straighter. During her investigation, she'd discovered archived footage of Rowan's K-9 training sessions at the academy. She'd watched a few, trying to understand the connection between the boy and Rook, but hadn't given them enough attention. With shaking fingers, she pulled out her phone and accessed the police academy's digital archives. The username and password she'd borrowed from a sympathetic tech still worked. Scrolling through the files, she found what she was looking for. Advanced K-9 Communication Protocols, Instructor Rowan Kett. The first video showed Rowan standing in the training yard, a German shepherd at her side. Her voice was clear and confident. "Dogs bridge the gaps you can't. When words fail, when traditional signals aren't possible, they become our universal translators." Wren leaned forward, watching intently as Rowan demonstrated a series of silent communication methods. "Dogs process rhythmic patterns faster than humans do," Rowan explained. "Their ability to recognize and respond to coded taps and touches can mean the difference between life and death in the field." The next clip showed Rowan working with a group of handlers. Every tap, every touch carries meaning. It's not just about commands, it's about creating a language that transcends human limitations. Wren's heart began to race. She remembered the boy's precise tapping on Rook's paw, both at the crash site and in the ambulance. It hadn't been random. It wasn't shock or confusion. He was using his mother's training system. She turned to look at Rook, who lifted his head and met her gaze. "You knew all along, didn't you? You recognized the code because she taught it to you." Rook's ears perked forward, his eyes alert and intelligent. Of course, he was a police dog, trained in these protocols. And the boy, growing up with Rowan, would have learned them too. Her phone buzzed. Eli calling. She answered immediately, putting it on speaker. "Are you okay?" His voice was rough with concern. "I'm alive," she replied. "But Eli, I think I've figured something out. Can you meet me? Somewhere safe? They agreed on a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town, far from the impound lot, and any of Merrick's usual haunts. 20 minutes later, Wren slid into a booth across from Eli, Rook settling vigilantly at her feet. The fluorescent lights made them both look ghostly, highlighting the soot on their clothes and the exhaustion in their faces. A tired waitress brought coffee without being asked, then retreated to give them privacy. "Look at this," Wren said, sliding her phone across the table. She'd queued up another of Rowan's training videos. Eli watched as Rowan demonstrated a complex series of taps and touches, her dog responding with precise movements. This is what the boy was doing? Yes. Wren leaned forward, her voice low but intense. Rowan developed this system for situations where verbal commands weren't possible. Think about it. Her son wouldn't be able to speak, but he'd still need to communicate. She made sure he had a way. Understanding dawned in Eli's eyes. So when he tapped Rook's paw, he was sending a message, and Rook understood because he's trained in these protocols. Wren pulled out a notepad, her hand steadier now as she wrote. The pattern I saw him use was this. She tapped out the rhythm on the table. Rook's head snapped up, his attention laser-focused. Wren did it again, and the dog's reaction was immediate. He stood, oriented himself north, then looked back at her expectantly. "Direction," Eli breathed. He was giving a direction. "North," Wren confirmed. "And think about the timing. Both times we saw him use it, after the crash and in the ambulance, he was being moved somewhere. He was telling us where they were taking him." Eli pulled out his own notebook, flipping through pages of notes. "The shipping depot," he said suddenly. "Remember those GPS logs from the impound lot? Most of the routes terminated at a shipping depot north of the city. That has to be where they're taking him now." Wren felt energy coursing through her, replacing the despair of earlier. "They lost their usual transport system when we exposed the rehab facility. They'll need somewhere to regroup, somewhere to hold him until they can arrange new transport." "It makes sense," Eli agreed, his own exhaustion giving way to focus. "The depot's private, secure, lots of ways to move people without attracting attention. But Wren..." He hesitated. "We don't have any evidence anymore. Nothing to take to a judge, nothing to justify a raid." "We have this." Wren held up her phone, showing Rowan's training footage. "We have proof that the boy knows these codes, that he's been deliberately communicating. And we have Rook, a trained K9 who can verify the signals." "It's thin," Eli warned. "It's all we've got." Wren looked down at Rook, who hadn't relaxed his alert posture. "And it's what Rowan left us. She knew something like this might happen. She made sure her son had a way to be heard, even when they tried to silence him." The waitress returned with fresh coffee, and they fell silent until she left. Outside, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. They'd been up all night, but Wren felt more awake than ever. "Okay," Eli said finally. "What's the plan?" Wren pulled out a city map, spreading it on the table between their coffee cups. "The shipping depot has 3 main entrances. They'll expect us to focus on those, so that's exactly what we won't do." She traced a line along the back of the property. "There's a maintenance access here, rarely used. Rook and I can get in that way while you create a distraction at the main gate. And once you're in, we follow Rook." Wren reached down to scratch behind her partner's ears. "He knows the boy's scent, and he understands the signals. If the boy's there, Rook will find him." Eli studied her face for a long moment. "This could end both our careers. Best case scenario." "I know." Wren met his gaze steadily. "But Rowan Kett died trying to protect her son and expose this operation. She left us the tools we need, her training, her codes, her dog protocols. We can't let that be for nothing." Under the table, Rook pressed his head against her leg, a gesture of solidarity and support. Wren felt strength flowing through that connection, not just from her loyal partner, but from Rowan's legacy, from the trust the boy had placed in them when he tapped out his silent plea for help. "We move at first light," she said, her voice firm, "before they have time to transport him again." Eli nodded, reaching for his phone. "I'll make some calls, get a few people in place who still owe me favors. We'll need eyes on all the official entrances." As they began working out the details, Wren felt a sense of purpose replacing her earlier despair. The evidence might have burned, but they still had something Merrick couldn't destroy: the silent language of loyalty, passed from mother to son, from handler to dog, creating a bridge across the darkness. She looked down at Rook, who sat alert and ready despite his injuries. "We're going to find him," she promised softly. "And this time, we're not letting go." The shipping depot loomed against the pre-dawn sky, a sprawling complex of corrugated metal and concrete that seemed to absorb what little light remained in the night. Wren crouched behind a stack of empty pallets, Rook's warm presence steady at her side. Her radio crackled softly. "East entrance is clear," Eli's voice came through, barely above a whisper. "I've got 3 officers in civilian vehicles watching the main gate. No movement yet." Wren pressed her radio. "Copy that. We're in position at the maintenance access." She studied the chain-link fence before her, noting the worn path where workers had clearly been cutting through despite the "no trespassing" signs. "Starting our approach now." The fence yielded easily to her wire cutters, the aging metal giving way with minimal noise. Rook slipped through first, his dark coat blending perfectly with the shadows. Wren followed, keeping low as they made their way across the gravel lot. Their path took them between towers of shipping containers, each one a potential hiding place for Merrick's men. But Rook's ears remained relaxed, his tail level. No immediate threats. They'd trained countless hours for operations like this, learning to move as one through hostile territory. "Movement at the main gate," Eli reported. 2 SUVs coming in. Looks like our friends from the hospital." Wren's jaw tightened. The same men who'd tried to take the boy before. "Copy. We're approaching the loading bay from the west side." The loading bay was a cavernous space cut into the main building, large enough for semi-trucks to back directly inside. As they drew closer, Wren could see lights burning within, hear the rumble of engines. She signaled Rook to hold position behind a stack of wooden crates. Inside the bay, shadows moved with purpose. Wren counted at least 6 men, maybe more, loading what looked like medical gurneys into the back of a waiting truck. Each gurney held a still form, bundled in blankets. "Multiple victims confirmed," she whispered into her radio. "They're loading them now. These kids are sedated, Eli. We need medical support standing by." "Already coordinated with County General. They're ready for multiple trauma cases." A pause. "Be careful, Wren. These guys are desperate now." She watched as another gurney was wheeled out. The blanket slipped slightly, revealing a young face she recognized. The boy from the crash, still unconscious. Her heart clenched. Rook tensed beside her, a low growl building in his throat. Wren touched his shoulder, using Rowan's silent command gesture. "Down, hold." The dog immediately dropped flat, though his eyes remained fixed on the loading bay. "I see Merrick," she reported, spotting the chief's silver hair as he emerged from an office doorway. "He's supervising personally." "Of course he is," Eli replied. "He can't trust anyone else after we exposed the rehab connection. Want me to move our people in?" Wren studied the scene, calculating angles and escape routes. "Not yet. We need to make sure they can't scatter with the victims. Let them finish loading the truck." She watched as gurney after gurney was wheeled up the ramp. Each one represented a life interrupted, a family searching, a future at risk. The enormity of what they'd uncovered, how long this had been happening right under their noses, made her hands shake with barely contained fury. Movement caught her eye. 2 more SUVs arriving, these with private security markings. More men in tactical gear emerged, taking up positions around the bay. They were preparing to move out. Eli, they're bringing in heavy security. Whatever timeline they're working on, it's accelerating. Copy that. I'm moving our people into position now. Remember, we need to contain them all in the bay. If that truck gets out... It won't, Wren said firmly. She shifted position, working her way closer to the bay entrance. Rook followed, belly low to the ground, every muscle coiled and ready. The loading was nearly complete now. Merrick stood at the back of the truck, checking something off on a clipboard. His face in the harsh fluorescent lights looked drawn, aged, but his movements were precise, controlled. This was a man who'd done this many times before. Wren's radio crackled again. All units in position. Give the word. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Somewhere in that truck, a young boy who'd trusted them with his silent message was waiting to be saved. Somewhere, his mother's spirit was watching, hoping they'd understood what she'd tried to teach them about bridges across silence. Rook's ears pricked forward. Through the open bay door, they could hear Merrick's voice. All clear, let's move out. Wren pressed her radio one final time. Execute now. The night erupted into motion and light. Police cruisers roared in from 3 directions, their spotlights painting the loading bay in harsh white. Shouts of, "Police! Freeze!" echoed off the metal walls. The security team scattered, some raising weapons, others diving for cover. But Wren's focus was entirely on the truck. As chaos erupted around them, she gave Rook the signal they'd trained for countless times. Take them down. The German Shepherd launched forward like a dark missile, crossing the open space in seconds. His powerful jaws closed on the arm of a guard reaching for the truck's door, bringing the man down with a startled cry. Wren was right behind him, her weapon drawn. "Step away from the truck, Chief," she called out, her voice carrying over the commotion. "It's over." Merrick turned slowly, his face a mask of cold fury. Behind him, through the open trailer doors, she could see the rows of gurneys, each one holding a silent victim of his operation. The boy from the crash was closest to the door, his peaceful face betraying no awareness of the battle being fought over his fate. The night had come down to this moment, a confrontation between corruption and conscience, between power and justice. As flashing lights painted the scene in red and blue, Wren stood her ground, Rook at her side, ready to end it once and for all. The night exploded into chaos. As Merrick lunged for the truck's passenger door, Rook moved with the fluid grace of a shadow. The German Shepherd's powerful legs propelled him forward, diving beneath the rising bay door just as the engine roared to life. Steam hissed from the truck's exhaust in the cold air as Wren's heart pounded. Through the windshield, she could see Rook's dark form launch into the cab, his teeth finding purchase on the driver's arm. The man screamed, his foot slipping off the brake pedal. The massive vehicle lurched forward, tires squealing against concrete. "Look out!" Eli shouted, pulling Wren back as the truck careened sideways. Metal shrieked against metal as the front bumper caught a fire hydrant, ripping it from its base. A geyser of water erupted, filling the air with a fine mist that caught the emergency lights in a rainbow of red and blue. Inside the trailer, gurneys shifted with the impact. The unconscious teens were secured, but the violent stop had knocked Dr. Pike off her feet. She scrambled up, her usually immaculate appearance now disheveled as she shouted into a radio. "Clear the cargo! Protocol 7 Alpha! Move everything north!" Her words matched the codes Wren had found on the key fobs perfectly. "The free, Officer's body camera captured every damning syllable as Pike's carefully maintained professional facade crumbled into panic. Merrick's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with desperation. "Transfer all units to Site Baker 4, authorization code Hawk Delta 3. Another perfect match to their evidence. Wren moved forward, her weapon steady. "Chief Vance Merrick, Dr. Corinne Pike, you're both under arrest. Hands where I can see them." Merrick's face contorted with rage. He reached inside his jacket, but Eli was faster. The detective tackled him from the side, driving him into the wet pavement. They grappled briefly before Eli gained control, snapping handcuffs around the chief's wrists. "You have no idea what you're doing," Merrick spat, his silver hair plastered to his forehead. "The people behind this—" "Save it for your statement," Eli cut him off, hauling him to his feet. Dr. Pike tried to dart past them, but Wren caught her arm. The director's carefully constructed poise had vanished entirely, replaced by the raw fear of someone watching their world collapse. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "We were helping them, giving them purpose." "By selling them?" Wren's voice was steel as she secured the handcuffs. "That's not help, Doctor, that's trafficking." Police units swarmed the scene now, officers securing the area and attending to the unconscious victims. Paramedics rushed in with proper medical equipment, carefully transferring the teens to legitimate ambulances. Through it all, Rook stood guard over the boy from the crash, his fur still damp from the hydrant's spray, but his posture alert and protective. Water continued to cascade from the broken hydrant, washing away years of secrets into the storm drains. Wren watched as Merrick and Pike were led to separate patrol cars, their empire of exploitation crumbling in the time it had taken a truck to hit a hydrant. Sometimes, she reflected, justice came down to split-second timing, and a faithful partner who understood that silence didn't mean surrender. "Officer Calloway," a sergeant approached, notepad in hand. "We'll need your body camera footage and a full statement." Wren nodded, her hand finding Rook's fur. The dog leaned against her leg, still watching the boy being carefully loaded into an ambulance. "He's the one who started all this," she said softly, with a simple tapped code that Rook understood. "Sometimes the smallest voices make the biggest difference," Eli said, joining them. He was soaked from the hydrant spray, but smiling. "The FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force is on their way. They'll want to coordinate on dismantling the entire network." Wren looked around at the scene. The crashed truck, the scattered evidence of Merrick's operation, the steam rising into the night air. It had started with a crash in a ditch and ended with another crash here, as if the story had come full circle. But this time, the crash had brought truth instead of tragedy. The courthouse buzzed with anticipation as the indictment hearing approached. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor where Wren stood, her dress uniform pressed and badge gleaming. Beside her, Rook sat at perfect attention, his dark eyes focused on the courtroom doors. Inside, the gallery filled quickly with reporters, officers, and families of those affected by Merrick and Pike's operation. The air felt heavy with years of secrets finally rising to the surface. When the bailiff called everyone to rise, Wren caught sight of Jonah Kett sitting with his court-appointed advocate. Though still thin and bearing faint bruises, his blue eyes held a quiet strength that reminded her of his mother. Chief Vance Merrick entered in handcuffs, his silver hair unkempt, and his usual commanding presence diminished by an orange jumpsuit. Dr. Corinne Pike followed, her professional facade cracked by dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. They sat separately, their attorneys creating a barrier between them, former partners now turned potential adversaries. The prosecutor rose, a thick stack of documents in hand. "Your Honor, the state presents evidence of an extensive human trafficking operation involving minors conducted under the guise of a rehabilitation program." she detailed the network piece by piece. The coded fobs, the impound lot records salvaged from digital backups, the GPS data, and most damning of all, Wren's body camera footage capturing their own words during the final raid. But the strongest testimony came in silence. Jonah Kett approached the witness stand, his steps steady despite his obvious nervousness. Unable to speak, he used a specialized communication board to answer questions, his fingers moving with deliberate precision as he described his mother's discovery of the trafficking ring, her murder disguised as an accident, and his own kidnapping. When asked about the crash that started it all, Jonah's hands moved to demonstrate the tapping pattern he'd used with Rook. The prosecutor played Wren's dash camera footage, showing the exact moment of connection between boy and dog. This code, she explained, was part of an advanced K-9 training program developed by the witness's mother, Rowan Kett, a program these defendants tried to bury along with her. Merrick's lawyer attempted to paint it as circumstantial, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury took less than 4 hours to return their decision. The indictment was unanimous. Both Merrick and Pike would face multiple federal charges for trafficking, conspiracy, and, in Merrick's case, accessory to murder. As the courthouse emptied, Eli caught up with Wren in the lobby. The FBI task force found 3 more facilities connected to their network, he said, his detective's badge catching the light. They're closing in on the bigger players. This is just the beginning. Wren nodded, watching Jonah with his advocate. What happens? To him now? His aunt's flying in from Oregon next week, Eli replied. But until then, there's something you should see. He handed her an envelope bearing the department seal. Inside, Wren found 2 documents. The first was her official reinstatement, clearing her of all disciplinary actions and commending her investigation. The second made her breath catch, transfer papers for Rook, granting her permanent ownership of her K-9 partner. But there was a third document, one that made her hands tremble slightly. Temporary custody papers for Jonah Kett, approved by Family Services until his aunt's arrival. We thought, Eli said softly, given everything that's happened, he might feel safest with someone who understands his silence. That evening, Wren opened the door to her small ranch house, leading Jonah inside while Rook trotted beside them. The boy's few belongings fit in a single backpack, but his eyes widened at the sight of his own room, freshly painted in calm blues with a desk by the window. I know it's not much, Wren said, setting his bag down. But it's safe, and it's yours for as long as you need it. Jonah's expression softened. He moved to the center of the room, where Rook had settled on a plush dog bed, one of several scattered throughout the house. Kneeling beside the shepherd, Jonah lifted his hand and tapped Rook's paw in that familiar rhythm, the same pattern that had started everything on that cold morning by the crash. Rook's ears pricked forward. With deliberate gentleness, he lifted his paw and rested it on Jonah's hand. A gesture of protection, of understanding, of promise. Wren leaned against the doorframe, watching this silent exchange between boy and dog. She thought of Rowan Kett, who had believed so strongly in the power of unspoken communication that she'd created a language of touch and trust. That faith had cost Rowan her life, but it had also saved her son and exposed a darkness that had festered too long behind badges and credentials. The last rays of sunset painted the room in warm gold, wrapping around this small, unexpected family brought together by tragedy, but bound now by something stronger. Not blood or law, but the quiet loyalty of hearts that understood each other without words. In the growing dusk, Jonah curled up on his new bed, Rook's protective form stretched across the threshold. Wren pulled a blanket over the boy's shoulders, remembering another officer who had once done the same for her. Sometimes, she realized, The family you choose, or the family that chooses you, becomes the anchor that helps you weather any storm. As she moved to leave, Jonah caught her hand. His fingers tapped against her palm. Not Rook's complex code this time, but a simpler message. Thank you. Wren squeezed his hand gently. Sleep well, Jonah. You're home now. She left the door cracked, a nightlight casting soft shadows on the wall. In the living room, she sank into her favorite chair, exhaustion and relief washing over her in equal measure. Her badge caught the lamplight from where it rested on the side table, no longer a symbol of institutional power, but a reminder of the real meaning of protection and service. Through the window, crickets sang their evening chorus, a gentle counterpoint to Rook's steady breathing from Jonah's room. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, helping Jonah heal, meeting his aunt, ensuring Merrick and Pike faced justice for every life they'd damaged. But tonight, in this quiet house where silence meant safety instead of fear, Wren allowed herself to feel the full weight of what they'd accomplished. One boy's courage, one dog's understanding, and one officer's refusal to look away had broken open a darkness that had seemed impenetrable. Sometimes, she reflected, the greatest acts of heroism came not in dramatic speeches or blazing gunfights, but in the simple decision to listen to those who had been silenced. From down the hall came the soft sound of Jonah turning in his sleep, followed by the gentle scratch of Rook, adjusting his position. Guardians in the darkness, keeping watch over hard-won peace. In that moment, Wren understood that while justice had been served, something even more precious had been created, a sanctuary built on trust, protected by loyalty, and spoken in the language of the heart. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.